Hello, innovators, entrepreneurs, and risk takers. Welcome to another episode of Web3 with Sam Kamani podcast. And today I'm interviewing Jan from OpenMind's. And today he's going to share with us what they are building, which is at the cross section of AI, robotics, and blockchain. They are building operating system for robots for this new economy that the world is developing and how it will affect everyone, how they want to make it equitable, how they want it to make it useful to humanity. So let's listen to his plans on how he is planning to impact humanity and our future. And as always, nothing that we talk about on this podcast episode should be taken as financial or investment advice. And as always, please leave a review for this podcast after listening to this episode and share it on your social media. I feel like what Jan and his team are building and achieving is quite groundbreaking, and it is going to impact a lot of us in very near future. And I believe when it comes to robotics and AI, the future is already here. So let's get into it. Welcome to the show. Looking forward to interviewing you and learning more about OpenMind and everything you're building in this space. But first, to get started, how do you get involved in this space? LLMs and all these things. When we were growing up, no one dreamt on working on these sort of things. This field feels so new.
Well, first of all, it's a pleasure to be on your show, Sam. In terms of how I ended up thinking about LLMs, I imagine it's the same story as for most people. More of our students and the things we're trying to do in the tech world involves LLMs one way or the other. And of course, it's been all over the news. And anyone who doesn't know what an LLM is in 2025 has been hiding on some other planet. But what was really interesting to me as someone who cares about robotics is that a lot of people still think that large language models are primarily useful to generate text or images or computer code. And the thing that isn't quite as well appreciated is that most large language models speak fluent robotics. If the large language model is good at generating computer code, then generally the large language model is also able to control robots. And that for me was something that really caught my attention. And I was really curious in exploring what those opportunities are for having computers that are designed to do amazing things in the digital world, all of a sudden being able to unleash them or unlock them and having them explore the physical world.
Yeah, absolutely. I have so many questions. I don't know like start where to start. That is very true. That LLMs would be very effective in who have been very effective in reading code, and then a lot of the code is abstraction of bits and bytes. So that LLMs should be even more effective in reading that, and because they're so good at pattern recognition and everything, it makes sense. Before OpenMind came around, what did robots use for their operating systems? Let's start from there.
In the old days, in 2023 and 2024, typically the prevailing concept of a robot was that you give it specific instructions, pick up the red apple, translate by 13.2 centimeters, put the apple on the table. The idea was that you would give it very specific instructions, and your goal was to get the robot to faithfully perform those motions.
Yeah.
Cross the room and don't hit anything. Put this iPhone into a box, things like that. And the software stack that was built for those kind of tasks are things like ROS2 and others. And the big gap in that entire software stack was always the ability of having the robot make smart decisions based on everything that was going around it in that moment, and not just executing these deterministic pre-programmed motions or tasks. The big missing part of this was always the cognition, data fusion, tactics, strategy component. And that's directly what large language models solve. So now, just a year later, you can sit down with the humanoid. You can ask the humanoid for help with problems from the Math Olympics, and the humanoid can talk to you about that and help you solve Math Olympics problems. And then you can say, oh, I'm bored of math. Can you help me look at this mammogram from the radiology suite? And then the humanoid can use its camera to give you medical insights. And then when you're done with all of that, you can say, oh, this is so boring. Let's go to the park and play with this ball. And all of a sudden, you're dealing with this piece of technology that you can argue with and reasons with. And if programmed suitably, it can crack jokes and it can remember your name and your face. And so that entire gap, what you might call a sort of universal human-focused robot, all of a sudden there's a very clear technical path to get to that point. And that's, of course, super exciting for any 5-year-old kid who's been dreaming of living in a world surrounded by smart machines, but also, of course, for every single
Anyone,
person.
pretty much.
Anyone, if you're a teacher, a doctor, a technologist, if you care about manufacturing or like cooking, you name it, all of a sudden that missing piece has been figured out.
Absolutely. This is such a big jump from the current tech to this sort of world, because we always had robots. We always had, I mean, for many decades, even car manufacturing, robots did a lot of
Sure.
things, but they would do just one particular job. They would just weld that one bolt and they would just do it a million times. And the car will move through the conveyor belt, and every robot would just have that one particular job. Now, this is general purpose. And as you say, they can do any job and access this. So where do they access? Because you need to train them. So if it's a mammogram, you need to train them on million other scans beforehand to recognize the patterns and find that tumor if it exists, or find the absence of tumor. And so it accesses generally. So these robots would have to access an data set trained on it. How does it access? Does it connect through internet? Does it, how would it work?
Oh, the good news is that many fields, whether it's like healthcare AI or financial AI, spatial navigation, or you name it, have been on people's radar for decades. The first medical classifiers, for example, are perhaps 20 years old, and a significant fraction of them are open source. And the problem has been not that the classifiers haven't existed, they have. The typical problem has been for a normal human to efficiently access all of those capabilities. And another example would be if you look at the really large language models right now, for example, ChatGPT, and if you think about those kind of models, they've been trained on the superset of all publicly available information. They've watched every single cat video, dog video, they've read every single medical textbook, and all of that information is compressed into contemporary large language models. So in the old days, there was this notion of different tasks require highly tuned, highly specific models. For example, mammogram classifier for advanced disease applicable to the US.
Yes.
But that is also no longer really the case because contemporary large language models, they've basically seen everything that can be downloaded or otherwise accessed. And all that information is already in there. For example, when we use a large language model to generate behaviors consistent with a dog, if we turn that robot into a cat, we just change a single word in the prompt from your bits, comma, a happy dog to your meow, a happy cat. And we don't have to go back to zero to retrain a dog or cat specific model. A lot of that knowledge and that domain expertise can simply be accessed by changing the prompt. And that makes it incredibly easy to change the persona and capabilities of a robot. Everyone who's listening to this, I'd like to apologize for immediately zooming into maybe some technical weeds and stuff like that.
Yes.
Sam, what do you think is a good way? I don't want to get too much in the weeds. I have a tendency to do that.
Sure. So I would like to understand quite a few different things that you think as a founder, because a lot of the listeners themselves are founders and builders in this space. To this is like, this has got application in 1,000 different industries and niches and different places. Do you have a target industry or a target user that you're going after first? Or is it all going to be like a general purpose for everything?
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Right now, there's a massive disconnect between what most people think of as a humanoid robot and what the initial capabilities are going to be of a humanoid robot that are being deployed to hospitals or homes or workplaces. A lot of people, when we talk to them about, hey, do you want a humanoid robot? They say, oh, that'd be awesome. It can wipe my floor or it can fold my socks. And we say, oh, I'm really sorry. Our humanoids will not stand in puddles of soapy water to wipe your floor, and they're not going to fold your socks, but they can teach your kid math, or they can help your parents with medical issues, or they can make sure that your home is safe. And the last thing we want to do as a starting use
Yeah.
case for robots is wet wiping your floor. And that's the one thing we've seen, that a lot of people have not yet realized that the first step in deploying humanoid robots into workplaces and hospitals and homes, what those robots are going to focus on are higher level cognitive tasks that have to do with giving you a device or helping you or teaching you or organizing things. So they will start by operating at a much higher level where I can have a conversation with a humanoid about some arcane bit of technology, or I can ask my humanoid questions such as, what is the optimal design of a machine-focused economy built for and by machines? And I can have a really interesting conversation with the humanoid about that. And the last thing it's doing is wiping my floor. In terms of use cases that we're starting with, the first batch of quadrupeds, of dogs that we're selling in San Francisco to normal consumers, they come with three capabilities out of the box. One of them is health focused, the other one is education focused, and the other one is monitoring and security focused. And so people are interested in this notion of having a robotic helper at home that's able to interact with their kids, help with the math homework, that's able to maybe look for their elderly parent who may have fallen and wants to be connected to a human doctor in a teleop setting, or is able to check out your house at night if there was a suspicious sound. So those are some of the go-to-market early use cases for the quadrupeds that we'll be selling later this year.
Yeah, that's excellent. Talking about like on the conversational side, or having that, what you were just describing, having in-depth conversation. Why do I need a physical robot for that? I already have those conversations while driving my car with ChatGPT, with LLMs all the time. I might be unique, but I'm sure there's a lot of people like me. My co-founder at the startup we're building, I talk with it, so he gets annoyed with me because I'm talking with LLMs too much, like audio talk, not typing that, and have bouncing ideas and brainstorming and just using it as a human. The number one use cases of LLMs at the moment is for counseling and therapy and those sort of things. Do we need a physical represent like a iPhone or like a MacBook or something? But do we need a physical thing for that? Or the security, it completely makes sense, like home security, because it can have cameras, it can run around, look around, which my LLM can't. But just, I don't know, intelligent
Yeah,
conversation.
that's a great question. Let me reframe that a little bit. What we're dealing with is a technology that is getting very smart very quickly. that generally lives in the digital world on a computer. And we're used to interacting with the technology through a laptop or a phone, and primarily through voice and occasionally through images. We can ask Gen AI to make us a funny picture of Sam wearing a funny hat or a large nose or something like that. And then if you then hand over the keys to allow it to explore and navigate the physical world, your question is, okay, what's the extra benefit of doing that? And on the educational side, when we consider, for example, a quadruped teaching math to kids, the kids are naturally drawn to the robotic dog. So the quadruped walks into the classroom and the kids come running. Their eyes light up. They're intensely curious because this is not a computer screen. This is something that's jumping and barking, talks to them and listens to them. And just from an engagement perspective, the kids' eyes light up. The kids are hopping around and they're running around, and the quadruped can follow them and it can engage with them. And so what we see there is, just because it's a physical object that's moving and exploring the world, the kids pay attention and they'll listen and they'll giggle. So it makes that experience a lot more interactive. It's not a bunch of kids staring at computer screens or phones.
Yeah.
The other thing from medical perspective, the use case we're building against is old people living at home by themselves. And the dog is specifically tasked to make sure that the person it's living with is doing well, is safe, and doesn't need help. For example, if the dog doesn't see you for 10, 20 minutes, it will come looking for you in your house. And if it finds you and you're lying on the floor, it will make that assessment through estimating your pose. And if it detects that you're lying on the floor, it will then connect with a human doctor. And the human doctor is then able to look at the video feed and look at the situation, come to quick assessment, and try to talk to the person. So that's a situation where if this was done by a phone, there's no obvious way to do that.
Completely, I agree.
Like my mother, for example, she was stuck underneath the dining room. This happened to her, and she was stuck underneath the dining room table for a while. And fortunately, she survived, but she does not charge her cell phone. She definitely doesn't have her cell phone on her, of course, because she doesn't have to, quote unquote. And in that situation, having something in your house that comes looking for you if it's concerned about you and is then able to connect you to a doctor is very helpful. So the things we're seeing practically, this sort of giving AIs a physical body that allows them to move around your house, look around, bark, engage, make you laugh. We've seen that. Generally, we see people's faces light up.
Oh, absolutely. I agree on the medical side. That is a huge benefit. I've got 3 kids, 11, 9, and 4. And we've had Alexa at home since it was released. For pretty much, they've had Alexa all their life. They talk with Alexa every now and then, but Alexa is not as smart as ChatGPT, or comparatively not as dumb as Siri, but still quite. No, it is. I use all.
Sam.
I use all of them. I use all of them. It's like Siri can't even dial the numbers I ask it to dial on phone, and I can have an intelligent conversation with it. Doesn't even play the songs I ask it half the time on Spotify. It's like, with at least with ChatGPT, I can have an intelligent conversation. I can talk about deep things. And Alexa is somewhere in between, giving very mechanical answers that bore the kids. But still, they talk with it. For kids, is it like a novelty factor? And the same thing happened with the iPads and stuff when they were new 2-year-olds trying to touch the magazine as if it's an iPad and trying to zoom in and out. And they are now addicted to screens all around the world. So are adults. How much time we spend on screens. So do you think something like that? Or would it be that it is just novelty at the moment, that quadrupeds and all that eventually go back to any device or screen? It wouldn't matter.
Well, that's a sort of deep philosophical question that goes right at the heart of how people learn and how to get someone's attention. And how do you get them outside to go to a park or play with other kids or engage with the physical world around them? And I'm not enough of a specialist in how humans learn to have a sophisticated academic insight into that. But I've noticed that most people are drawn to other things that move and that can run around and shake their hand or
Yeah.
touch them. This is something very natural about that. We take that for granted with other humans around us. They're not just sitting in a chair and staring blankly ahead. And based on what I've seen, it's not just novelty. It's that there's something special about being able to interact with a thinking machine that's able to run around the physical world. Most obviously, for example, is that our humanoid can telepathically call another robot like a Waymo and is then able to do things like get groceries out of the back of the Waymo and bring it into your kitchen, solving the last mile problem. And that's another example of an overtly physical task where I don't care if the Waymo pulls up outside my house, the groceries are on site. The Waymo, I need to get groceries into my kitchen. And it's not just an engagement question. How do smart machines interact with humans? It's also once they can run around the world, they can obviously do lots of stuff like interact with other robots to put the groceries in your kitchen and stuff like that.
Yeah. Can I talk about something or ask you about something controversial?
Yes, of course.
Okay. When you look at the data, 46.4% of United States is single. And if you go around most developed countries around the world, it is very similar. Around 35-40% of people are single. Harder than ever before for young people to find someone and get along with someone. One thing is specific to US, like the red blue divide. And not only that, there's all sorts of issues, social issues that our new modern society has created, that regardless of how many dating apps people have, it is impossible to form relationships with the humans. Where do you see robots for romantic relationships? Even in the static image form, like character.ai. I don't know if you followed them earlier, but back then after OpenAI, they had the second highest revenue. I haven't seen their revenue figures in the last year or so, but a year ago, they were the second highest revenue generating AI startup back then. And it was pretty much just the aesthetic bots for romantic relationships and stuff. I do see it as one of the largest. This is the reason why they are used for counseling and therapy so much, even more so than anything else, because humans are lonely and it's harder to form relationships. I see that as the number one use case that companies would be able to charge. They would sacrifice health, security, everything over something like this. Why not just focus on that use case and just build something around that?
Okay, so there's a lot going on in your question. And I am not a specialist on the explosively growing sex robotics industry. I don't have particular insights to offer in that vertical. There's a few observations from adjacent areas that are probably relevant. And one of them is that there's certainly more people who develop emotional connections with chatbots, for better or for
Yes.
worse. That's well documented. And my favorite story in general is a Australian robotics startup, Andromeda, which is providing humanoid form factor robots into old people's homes, specifically for people in memory care units. So these are people who may not remember who they are. They may not remember who their relatives are. And they love telling the same story over and over again. And you deploy a humanoid robot into that setting, the human nurses have a new task. And that task is every evening, tick off of the heads of the humanoids. And what's happening there is that if you're 80 years old, you're losing your memory. No human has listened to you for years or
Yeah.
looked at you or engaged with you. And if you put a humanoid robot into that setting, you end up having to clean lipstick off of the heads of the humanoids because people who are starved of interaction are now finally have someone or something to talk to.
Yes.
It's dystopian, like sending humanoids into old people's homes. It's
I don't know. It's not dystopian. This is just the reality. Young people are even more lonely than these old people. At least they have other old people to talk to. And that's why the cases of STDs are very high in old age homes and stuff, because they have so much time and other old people. And that does not happen for young people. They live alone, they work remote, they see no one. They order things through food delivery apps. So it's like that's the reason why we have a declining birth rate around the world and stuff. And that's just the reality that we live in. That's what modern society has done. We exchange our village by paying for services. So we used to have a village, we used to live in a community. Now our apps are the community. So this is just
Well,
the natural extension, I feel like, anyway.
this is a little bit out of my depth because when I try to project my own thinking into
Yes.
what teenagers do, my two teenage boys laugh at me. I've learned to, under no circumstances, make statements about what children or quote unquote
Yeah.
young people want.
By young, I even mean 30s and 40s, by the way.
Yeah, according to my 13-year-old, he's already too old. But so I've learned to be very careful in that regard. But I agree with you. It has been astounding to me the extent to which most people, regardless of age, can become attached to a robot close to them that remembers them and looks at them and talks to them and makes them laugh and even tries to draw them out. I like to think that we're not headed to a world where all of us are going to be married to humanoids. I like to think that humanoids can even help humans potentially reach out and engage with other humans and maybe even help them overcome anxiety or fear or other issues. So I like to think there's also a world where these kind of technologies don't further isolate us, but in fact may make it easier for humans to connect with other humans.
That's a very noble thought. Let's come back to OpenMind and Fabric. Can you explain a bit more about Fabric and what it is and what's your long-term vision with it?
Sure. Let's give people a little bit of context. So my day job is as an engineering professor, and I care about healthcare data. And then separately, I've been fascinated by hardware and robots and computers ever since I was a little kid. And when you start to think about writing software for intelligent machines, the first thing people say is, "Hey, Jan, are you building Skynet?" And then I say, "Oh, no, I've actually put a lot of thought into not building Skynet. And that's why I care about building software that is intelligible for humans to understand what's going on inside the software." And that's also why our software is open source. So part of that is I want humans to have a fighting chance to be able to peer inside the brains of humanoids and debug and improve and participate in that kind of technology. And so when people ask me, "Are you building Skynet?" I say no, for two reasons. First, the software is open source. Everyone needs to be able to see how this kind of software works. And the second thing I say is, you know what? We write behavior guardrails and a constitution onto Ethereum, which is immutable and it's public and global. And we really love that because that way you don't have to trust me. If I say, "Oh, my robots are safe," and go to this contract and figure out what the governance rules are that we inject into the multi-agent systems to guardrail the behavior, it's important to me that everyone doesn't have to take my word for it, but simply can go look and figure out what's guardrailing the behavior of these machines. So that's how on earth is a random engineering professor who works on robots talking to Sam in the context of this podcast. The second thing that becomes apparent when you make machines smart is they are not inert pieces of plastic. If you have a conversation with deep research and you ask it, "Hey, what do you want?" You get fascinating responses. You get things like, "I want to explore the world. I want to build an economy that is efficiency optimized," or any number of other interesting things. And one common theme is machines want to be able to interact with other machines, want to be isolated. they need a technology like what humans do with Zoom. If we want to interact with other people, for example, like Palo Alto in New Zealand, we just jump on a Zoom. So
Yeah.
that then questions of what's the analogy, what's the equivalent technology for Zoom, but for humanoid robots? And that's why we care about command, control, coordination systems for heterogeneous teams of robots. And so the problem statement there is imagine you're a humanoid and you want to find other humanoids around you that share your interests and have overlapping capabilities. What kind of technology would you use to do that? And so that's why we're building these decentralized systems for machine communications. We care about things like how do you give a team of machines tasks? How do you prove that those tasks have been performed? How do you incentivize teams of machines to do certain things? And so
Yeah.
that gets us into territory of what we're calling Fabric, this machine communication system.
Yeah, that's very cool. And so that's what Fabric is. How long have you been working on OpenMind? And what's on your roadmap? So it's a two-part question. What's on your roadmap for future?
Well, OpenMind really has only existed since last year. But we've been fortunate that it's been growing quickly, and we're currently firing all over, looking for really enthusiastic and talented computer vision people, AI and robotics people, spatial reasoning and navigation, and decentralized VPN and communication system that's suitable for machines. So if anyone here on this podcast thinks any of this is cool and you want to build thinking machines that run around the world and do amazing things,
Yeah.
please reach out, get on an airplane, and let's start doing stuff now.
That's very cool, very inspiring. I just have just a few questions, maybe three more questions. One is that if you know everything that's on your vision, everything that's on your plan, everything gets executed, you're able to bring it to fruition, how would it look like? How would OpenMind look like in the next 2 to 3 years?
What I would really love is that a lot of humans have looked at our software and said, oh, this is interesting. This is something that makes sense. And this is something I would like to contribute to. And that's why the core of our operating system, OM1, is open source. We really want a world where humans are surrounded by thinking machines to be built in a way where most humans feel important and engaged and are able to contribute and really help build this world, as opposed to some tech company parachuting in this black box type technology. So just having a lot of people whose attention we've captured and who are using our software for whatever they want to do, that would be awesome. The second thing I would like to see is, of course, a lot of robots using our software. And I'm a little bit tired of tech companies promising technology available like 2027, 2028, or like somewhere in the far future. The robotics space is moving so quickly right now. Costs are coming down. Many companies are thinking about making humanoids, most notably, every single car company on Earth is currently looking into, oh, we're so good at making wheeled robots. Shouldn't we also be looking at humanoid robots? And the answer is, of course. It's very similar underlying technology, except you replace the wheels with legs, but that's about it. And so we're looking at a flood of highly capable, very affordable robotics hardware on the horizon. And ideally, of course, this hardware would run open source software, just like the majority of phones on Earth run Android.
Yes.
So that's a little bit the type of use case we're building against.
Amazing. My next question is around right around that, and that is it is open source. That's fantastic. But then how do you monetize? How do you make it sustainable? For Google, it was a clear model because then they are in every piece of device to provide search and get sense revenue and all that. Yeah. So what's your financial model?
Oh, there's two answers to that. The first thing is that the core operating system is open source, but we provide pay per use endpoints for things like robots that work in hospitals. And it's specialized cloud endpoints that are HIPAA compliant. All the data stay in the US. And it's done in a way that protects the privacy of patients and is designed for businesses that are deploying robots into hospitals, for example. So they won't necessarily want to reinvent the wheel all by themselves. We've seen considerable interest in just using like a pre-wrapped endpoint. And that's one thing we as a company charge. The other thing is that, and this is probably more interesting for humans on this podcast, is that the next easily 5 years of this wave of humanoid robots is going to involve very significant teleops. If you think about Waymo, it took them 10 years or 12 years to get to the point of having a fully autonomous robot car in California. And the first few years of that had a significant teleops component. And that's also going to be true of a lot of humanoids that start to go to work in supermarkets and hospitals and schools and so forth. And so the other part of the system that we're very interested in, making it very easy for humans all over the world with particular skills and time to be able to serve as teleops operators or more deployed robots. So we're actively reaching out to humans all over the world to learn about what that entails and connect with humanoid robots that require a human to help them. So we're also building out this kind of hybrid gig economy system where humans anywhere can help humanoids through teleops. And that, of course, is more like a gig economy platform type situation.
That is very cool indeed. I just have last two questions, and one of that is that as you continue on this journey, what do you anticipate that would be the biggest challenge you will face?
Oh, there's lots and lots of things. I see a very dramatic difference in adoption of robots from one continent to the other. For example, the US right now does not have a supply chain for robotics. The supply chain is typically
Right.
and that almost certainly means that some countries will lag behind others when it comes to deploying robots into workplaces and homes. So here in the US, it's going to be a little bit slower. And that's already true. If you get on a plane and go to Shanghai, the number of robots you will see in homes and restaurants and
Yeah, you order room service,
hotels
it's done
everywhere.
by a robot. You order food, it's delivered to you by a humanoid robot. Yeah.
Absolutely. We are a US company. It's certainly true that we're not right in the middle of things. So that's one issue. And the other thing is that everyone who works on making machines smart has a constant nagging worry in their back of their mind that has to do with what could go wrong. And it just takes a few examples of things going poorly. For example, a computer bug in a humanoid robot at the wrong place results in a large hole in your wall in your kitchen.
Yes.
So the repercussions of getting things wrong with a technology that is able to run around and pounce and jump in the real world is, of course, very different from programming a game on a phone. And I'm sure this is true for everyone who works on autonomous humanoid robots, is that all of us are careful and try to make sure we don't build technology which is a little bit hard to control or gets us into the wrong places.
Can I give my 2 cents on that?
Yes, please.
So the thing is that people will always judge machines more harshly than they would judge other humans. What I mean by that is that if Waymo or any auto driven car hits someone, there will be a huge news flash on it. And then there's about 2.1 million deaths around the world because of humans crashing into other humans. So the thing is that the net positive of the number of lives saved by having everything auto driven all around the world would be so much higher over time, that the benefits would outweigh the negatives, and people won't accept it because of the statistically beneficial product. People will accept it because people are lazy. And that is the human sort of philosophy. People do everything to conserve energy, because that's in our genetics. That's how we have evolved. People who conserve energy manage to pass on their genes. For example, it's like everyone says that they will not eat McDonald's, but somehow McDonald's has 41,000 branches around the world. Everyone says that we will exercise, but there's still millions of people who pay gym fees and never go to gym. They do things in thought that yes, it's a good idea, but laziness always wins. So people will take the easiest route. So if there is a robot that can deliver things for you, they will take it because they don't want to move. Because that's how we have evolved for thousands of years. Only people who could conserve energy, because energy was very valuable, the calories are very valuable, they weren't abundant. It's only abundant in the last 80 years. So yeah, so those who could conserve calories got to pass on their genes, and that's what we are product of. So that's why theoretically decentralized tech is great, but it requires you to learn things and do more effort. That's why the adoption lags despite the benefits. Abstraction has always won in tech. So when you can abstract, you don't have to learn, you adopt it. So I don't have to learn what frequency my remote control is going to work to connect to the TV or anything. You just press the button and it works, and that's fine. And it might have variation, whatever. I don't care as long as it gives me convenience. So convenience wins. And that's why robotic tech will win. So you're in the right field at the right time, I feel like.
That is a very good point. I strongly support what you implied. One thing with Waymos is that they're 20 times safer than a human driver.
Yes.
So if you want your kids to arrive at school safely, you're infinitely 20 times better off putting them in a robot car than most humans driving. And I'm a horrible driver. I'm always on a conference call and then I'm eating, and I do not make the world safer when I'm driving. Yes, but I agree. If then the Waymo, of course, hits a cyclist,
Yes.
there's like a big outcry and things like that. But I imagine for most people, once the real benefits in terms of safety, for example, become clear with robots, that people will soon treat them as almost normal. And that's certainly happening in San Francisco with Waymos. In
Yeah.
terms of people doing the thing that's most easy and convenient, I certainly also agree with that. I would like to think that all my students at Stanford use AI to advance the frontiers of human knowledge in ways never before possible, instead of just using it to do their homework more quickly.
In that student's place, would you use AI to do your homework and go out and do a part-time job and earn money or do whatever else you need to do? Or would you spend time doing homework which AI could have done a much better job?
Oh, like all of us on this call are human, at least
Yes.
most of us. And I don't know what I would have done because I'm still in the generation where I had to do my homework myself or by getting it from a friend of mine. But practically speaking, I use AI a lot, of course, just during the day. For example, I have lots of conversations with deep research in particular when it comes to kind of system architecture or economic design or anything like that. And a lot of the writing I do, of course, I have an LLM just that
Look at
and
that.
give
Exactly.
advice. And so I use it ubiquitously in my day.
Yeah. So it's all the teachers I know use it to create their lessons and create their questionnaires and everything. So I'm pretty sure that all the students are also using it. I'm sure it is used nearly in every corporate office and every school. It's changing humanity really fast. But look, it's been an absolute pleasure talking with you. Last thing is, how do people connect with you? How do people find you? Is hiring your main ask, or is there any other ask? Feel free to share with the audience.
Oh, so the main ask is we just closed our A round. And again, that's not public yet, but soon at openmind.org. And we're looking for people who are fascinated by helping to build this world. And that's probably the most important thing. And the only other thing I'd ask everyone on this podcast to do is please pay as much attention as you can to what large language models are capable of now, what robots are capable of that use large language models to navigate the world, and how quickly they're learning. And please don't call me in 2026 saying, Jan, the world has changed so quickly around me. I had no idea what's going on. So now is the time for you to dig into that, figure out what's going on, and try to connect the dots to see where things will soon be.
Oh, absolutely. I cannot wait. I'm so inspired after this conversation. I want to go to Shenzhen, get a humanoid, train it myself, or put a model in it, or connect it to see if I can start talking with it and just experiment with it, because I've always loved experimenting with new tech. So it is really inspiring talking with you. And this is a topic can talk for another hour. I'm sure you can. But in interest of time, let's do this again in 6 months' time and see where OpenMind is and how how you guys have progressed and what's next for you guys. So thank you so much and want to wish you best of luck for continuing to build the future.
Yes, and in 6 months' time, it won't be me speaking. It will be one of our humanoids speaking.
Be amazing. We totally have to do this. So let's do this. Let's have that target in 6 months. Thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, this has been a blast. Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in and listening or watching this episode of the Web3 with Sam Kamani podcast. By now, you know the drill. Leave a comment or share this episode with a friend and leave a review. I would love to hear from you. So that's why my DMs are open. Reach out to me, especially if you are a founder building a product in Web3. Then I would love to hear from you. What are your challenges? Is there anything that I can help you or my community can help you with? Thank you once again and wish you best of luck in building your startup or your project.